Hi, welcome to another episode of Expat Experts. Today I've got Mohsin Patel. He's a friend of mine, and I actually was on his podcast, so I wanted to get him on mine so we can kind of grill him on what he does and get some advice from him. He is the co-founder of Islamic Finance Guru, and he also has a platform in which he helps 4 million people through this Islamic Finance Guru a month with their finances. So it's called an investment arm, a curate capital, and they manage $100 million and allow people to invest in private investments such as real estate and private equity. So it sounds quite intense. So we're going to ask him today some questions about this and see what he can share with us. So Mohsin, first question, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Is tell us a bit more about the foundations of Islamic finance. I think people are quite interested to know what the fundamental principles are when you're dealing, if someone comes to you and says, look, I want to deal with this, but I want to do it in an Islamic financial kind of conventional financial matter. How is it different?
Yeah, so I think, we've got this term kind of Islamic finance, right? And I think it can sound quite scary if you're not in the field. And what I always do to kind of dispel this myth is just liken it to food. Okay. We all eat, and in the same way we all have to deal with money, right?
Of course.
And those of a Muslim persuasion have to adhere to certain food requirements, which are pretty well known even in the mainstream. A lot of people know that Muslims will only eat halal, similar to how those of the Jewish persuasion will only eat kosher.
And we don't eat pork, exactly.
Right? So similarly, when it comes to finance, we have a certain set of rules that we want to adhere to when it comes to our money, all things money. So finance, investments, and everything that pertains to money.
Right.
And that's all it is really. So it's not a kind of, I think, on the practitioner side, I think people get quite scared about, a lot of complex structuring and all this kind of thing. And even on the kind of, the average person probably gets a bit baffled when they hear this term Islamic finance. But really all it is just, dealing with your money.
But doing it with some more principles
exactly,
kind of attached
doing it in
to
a way that adheres to, the Islamic principles.
So my quick question is also, how did you kind of get involved with this? I know you started in the UK.
Yeah, so, we started as a blog in 2015.
Oh, wow.
So me and my co-founder Ibrahim, we were corporate lawyers. And we
Ibrahim
had this
puts
problem.
a lot of videos up, is he?
Yeah. So we had this problem, right? So we were, young lawyers working, and like a lot of people, you kind of like, okay, what do I do now with this money? And we were both kind of interested in finances and investments and had been for some years. And it kind of made sense for us to just, start writing about this kind of thing. And it evolved, and eventually we kind of quit our day jobs, and it's evolved now into a fully fledged asset manager. So we manage around $100 million into various different asset classes.
And then you kind of moved over here and relocated here as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so we obviously we're still kind of headquartered in the UK. We're building out here. Our business has pretty much from day one always been global. So we've got clients in the UK. Clients all over.
Yeah, which is really good.
So a question from me, in terms of the Islamic finance sector in the UAE, what sort of trends do you predict, or what have you seen change in the last few years or so?
So I think here it's a bit different to obviously where I've come from in the UK. So in the UK you're dealing with a minority population, albeit growing, where you're kind of on the fringe, and there's like a lot of activity to try and serve what is effectively an underserved community, right? So in the UK back in the day, you had people like HSBC who were serving them in a small capacity through their HSBC Amana arm, which then fell away. And then now you've kind of got this generation with the likes of us and a few others that are kind of trying to do stuff. So it's a very much kind of grassroots field, whereas here it's different, right? Because you're dealing with a Muslim majority population. So by default, any incumbent business, any large bank, has to have the kind of Islamic window, as they call it in the industry, right? So even if they're doing conventional finance, you guys might even have seen it when you're setting up a bank. They'll probably ask you, you know, do you want an Islamic account or a standard account or something like that. So here it's very much kind of par for the course. Like it's very normal. Again, like going back to the food analogy, right? It's the same here. Like you go into anywhere, and you know, as a Muslim, I don't have to question is the meat halal. Like it's gonna be halal. Similarly with with the big banks and stuff, they'll always have an Islamic option. So I think that's like one very big difference. I guess the other thing is that both here and the UK and globally, we're seeing a lot of kind of younger companies like ours coming up, who are doing it through like a digital first way. So you've got companies now who are seeing exactly what people want and serving them from the ground up. And you've got a lot of slick apps nowadays and a lot of easy onboarding and a lot of this kind of stuff. So it's an interesting time.
So that's interesting because you said here they kind of know your preference and they kind of ask you those questions. But in the UK, do you think a lot of people have misconceptions about Islamic finance? Do they think it's rigid or it's different or it's going to be difficult, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Ultimately, it goes back to the first point, right, around how it can seem a bit alien, unless you actually kind of once you get into it, you kind of understand that actually it's not I mean, economically it's not that much different, but it's just how you might set some things up. At the heart of it, what Islam encourages is the sharing of risk. What it doesn't like is interest for a start. In the sense that someone with the power, i.e. the one giving the money, can simply dictate that this is the interest rate. If you don't pay it, we're gonna foreclose on you.
If you want to make something, for example, Sharia friendly or Sharia compliant, how do you get around that whole interest debate? So you have a lender normally that gives you a loan or gives pays to you're able to buy that property with that finance. So then how is the Sharia model different?
So I mean, it's the topic of endless debate.
I might want to get a Sharia mortgage, so I'm trying to find out.
I mean, it's the topic of endless debate in the Islamic finance world, but I don't want to kind of get into that.
Yeah, it takes time.
What I will say is that there's like a very pure way of doing it, and then there's a way of doing it which kind of you might deem to be necessary because you're playing with a financial system that is ultimately interest based, right? So let's go with the pure model. I'll say kind of what the ideal would be. The ideal would be, let's say I'm the lender and let's say you're the borrower. I would say to you, okay, Samara, you want to buy this house, that's fine. Let me do my due diligence. I'm going to see if this is a good asset or not that I would like to lend on. And I might say, for instance, that, okay, this house is, I don't know, $1 million. I'm going to purchase this, and it's mine, and it's in my name, and it's my risk, etc. for the time that I own it. And then what I can do is a day later I can sell it to you for $1.2 million, and I can say to you, look, Samara, I'm going to sell this to you for $1.2 million, on the basis that you can pay me over a period of 5 years. But crucially, what I should also then be doing is sharing in some of the risk of that, right? So if the house gets burned down, that's a risk that I'm taking on. I might mitigate that through insurance, separate topic altogether. But the point is that there's something in the middle, this house, that we share some risk on, so that there's genuine economic activity happening.
Okay. So that sounds good.
In terms of, for example, investment opportunities that there might be available within the Islamic finance sort of framework, what are the kind of things that people could look at?
Yeah, it's a good question. Pretty much everything is open. But obviously anything to do with kind of interest-based returns are not. So if you're a kind of UK person, what you might rule out is things like cash ISAs. Deposits in a conventional bank are ruled out because of the interest element. Now there are alternatives. You obviously have Islamic banks where you can deposit money. But then when you get into the kind of the pure investments or the real investments, so things like property is fine. Things like private equity are fine, as long as you structure them in a way where, as we're going back to the house example, you know, there's something real at the heart of it, and there's some risk there, and there's reward there, and the reward is shared.
Some risk, exactly.
And that's the whole point of it, is that is what genuine economic activity is.
No, that sounds really good. Another question that stems from that also is, so when you're talking to your clients about these products that are essentially trying to comply with Sharia law and have those elements in it, are there challenges involved for you as a person that's dealing with it, with your clients?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, obviously if you are in the market for investments that comply with your faith, you know, you're coming at it from a point of principle, right? So you want to make sure that the person on the other side of the table is, you know, aligned with those principles, right?
Yeah, of course.
And you want to make sure that they're not, you know, making stuff up, that they've got the right credentials to be able to make sure that, you know, whatever they're doing on.
So people make things up?
I'm sure they do.
Oh, really?
I'm sure they do. Because, you know, it's an interesting market, right? You know, the Muslim market, the Muslims are like nearly a quarter of the world's population. They have this very specific need, and it's not very well served.
So is it more kind of due diligence you're saying that you have to do?
Well, if you're a client, I mean, what I would advise anyone, you know, whether you're doing business with us or whether you're doing business with, you know, whoever, you want to make sure that first, you know, just do your own kind of sniff test. I think most people generally kind of understand the red flags when it comes to, you know, Sharia. But then also, you know, the firm that you're dealing with, firstly, you know, are they, forget the Sharia side for a second, are they actually, you know, regulated in the markets that they're operating in? You know, there's a lot of people that fall prey to scams and that kind of thing. So there's that bit of due diligence that you need to do. And then on the Sharia side, similar there, right? Do your own sniff test, make sure that this sounds like, you know, a broadly Islamic transaction. You know, have they got a Sharia board that they need, you know, to sign off on transactions? You know, are the principals who are doing the diligence, you know, qualified? Yeah, absolutely. And that's there to protect everyone, right?
Yeah, you need that, exactly.
Yeah, so I had a question about whether you've seen any impact from sort of like the fintech space in terms of the finance industry, Islamic finance industry in Dubai, and whether there are any similar sort of innovations that are impacting it that you've noticed.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as I was kind of saying earlier, the fintech stuff is really interesting because, you know, what it's meant is that, you know, people like us, frankly, can come into the market and offer something to people that, you know, wasn't really there before. You know, to give you an idea, like the kinds of investments that we're offering through our platform, you know, are not really accessible to, you know, to someone unless they're able to do, you know, 7-figure tickets. So, you know, that innovation, you know, multiply that by however many number of people are doing interesting things, it just ultimately means, you know, better competition in the market. You know, people are able to do more things with their money, and that's a good thing as long as it's all, you know, properly regulated.
So it's opening things a little bit more.
Exactly,
Definitely.
absolutely, yeah.
So we're getting to the end now, Mohsin. So some advice for investors. What would you give to individuals who are interested in exploring Islamic finance as part of an investment strategy? What would you say to them?
Yes, I think you probably touched on some of them during our chat. I think the first one around what I always say around investments is that, you know, nobody invests for the sake of investing. We invest because there's a goal, right? I want to, you know, buy a house. I want to, you know, fund my kids' university. There's something, right? There's something, or there's multiple things. So it's always important to understand why are you investing, because that then dictates what you're going to invest in. So, you know, if I need money, regular, you know, income over the course of the next 3 years because I want to fund, I don't know, my son's university, you know, I can't invest in, or shouldn't be investing in, a product that says, you know, this is illiquid, you will not receive any dividends, see you in 5 years. Whereas, you know, on the flip side, if I have got, you know, 5-10 year horizon, then I can do those kinds of things. And the reward for those is different, right? You should expect more reward if you're going to be locking up your money for a while
Yeah.
versus something that's a bit more short term. That's just the nature of
Yeah.
these things. So
Yeah.
first one is understand why you're investing.
Mhm.
The second one is, do a lot of homework on who you're investing with.
Mhm.
As I said before, make sure they're regulated, get reference checks, speak to people who invested with them.
Get recommendations.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because the finance industry is just, as you can imagine, like
Yeah.
absolutely laden with
Yeah.
scammers, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it's really important that we do our homework when it
No,
comes
of
to that.
course.
And then the last piece of advice is to be consistent. Don't be disheartened if the stocks are down 10%, because some things are long-term investments, and as long as you invest in something that is high quality,
Yeah.
you can ride it out.
Mm.
So yeah, that's
So that
what
really
I'd say.
runs us off to the
Yeah.
end, right? So
That's
what
good
would you,
advice.
what kind of advice, apart from that, would you also give to our listeners from your experience, like maybe even moving to Dubai, or in what they should do by Islamic finance, or
Yes,
anything you want to share?
I think on the international side, I think one thing that's overlooked a lot is the currency.
Okay.
So it's always important to understand, especially like here in the
Mhm.
UAE, what's my future outlook?
Yeah.
Am I going to move back to the US, Canada, UK?
And sometimes people have to because of a family situation
Exactly.
or something takes
Yeah.
them back home. Exactly.
Very often, right?
Yeah.
You see it all the
Yeah.
time.
Of course.
So it's always important to understand that, because that affects your investment. So if you know that, I'm pretty likely within the next 10 years to go back to my home country,
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense to have an awful lot of investments here, because then you're going to have to be thinking about transferring those across.
Yeah.
There might be a currency issue. It's like, for example, if you're in the UK,
Yeah.
whereas GBP, you're taking a currency risk by investing here with like a 5-year horizon,
Yeah,
because
of course.
who knows what's going to happen to the dirham
Yeah,
versus
true.
pound. So always important to think about that and have that in your mind whenever you're making an investment.
No,
No,
that's really good
helpful.
advice.
Yeah.
But
Thank
thank you
you.
again for coming on.
No, thank
That
you.
was like a nice snippet of kind of your experience. So we've got Mohsin Patel we've had today. Thank you much for coming, and see you again soon.
Thank you.